Okay.
The podcast is live.
Yes. Hello, everyone. This is Amy, the Mystic Rose Tarot. It's a little bit after 7:30, August 31st on Monday. Western astrology-wise, we are in the full moon. Not quite yet. We're Aquarius, moving into Pisces. But Vedic-wise, we are moving into Aquarius. Is that correct, Julianne?
Yes. So moon in Aquarius. Yes.
So I have Julianne Victoria with me. She is of Through the Peacock's Eyes. She is well-versed astrologer, tarot reader, healer, spiritual all-encompassed well-being person. Beautiful spirit. And that's why I wanted to bring her into my show, but also because I do Mystic Moon Mondays and I like to talk about moon energy, and that's what Vedic astrology more or less is surrounded by. It's the premise of it.
Yeah, it's a bigger emphasis, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to break down. We're not going to go into great detail because Vedic astrology is very complex. There's a lot to learn from it. And I don't want to say I'm new to it, but it's still very complex for me. So I'll be asking Julianne some questions. If anyone who is watching, please feel free to join in, answer any questions, Vedic astrology oriented. If you're not too sure what that is, ask her. And we're also going to talk about Western to compare the two to make it easy for individuals who are more versed in Western astrology versus Vedic astrology. So we'll bring that understanding in a simplified way. As best as we can.
Try to, yes.
As best as we can. So my first question, let me get my notes here just to get started. Actually, let's just start here.
Okay.
As I mentioned, Western astrology, full moon is moving into Pisces tomorrow, but we are now Aquarius. How is that transitional state from one sign, Western astrology, one sign from Aquarius into Pisces versus Vedic? Is the energy any different when it's going from Capricorn into Aquarius? How is it similar? Is it the same?
That's interesting. No one's ever asked me anything like that before, like the transition of signs.
Yeah, the in-between energy. I don't know if there's...
Yeah, I think it's, well, like when you're talking about like those cusp degrees, like 28 degrees to 2 degrees of the next sign, I would say it's very similar, and that the energy of the sign is intensified then. So any planets in those degrees tend to be stronger.
Okay.
In Vedic astrology, it's especially the Gandanta points, which are, there's 3 of them where the lunar and solar zodiacs coincide, like they both end and begin, and that's at the end of the water signs.
We have a little bit of slowdown with the connection.
Am I slow, or?
You were slow, but now it's okay. Maybe you can speak slower. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know. As I was saying, so there are what's called the Gandanta points, which is the transition. A way to simplify it is the transition from the water sign into the fire sign, because it's the 3 points where the lunar and solar zodiacs coincide. So where like the sign of Cancer and it's slipping my mind, the nakshatra end at the same time.
Okay.
Oh, Jeshta. Yeah, my brain's like, oh no, my brain's like, oh,
sorry, I threw you for a
together. And so they both end, and then the new signs begin in the lunar and solar zodiac. So there's those extra intensified points. But that's such a good question, because it's not something I read about or think about or anyone asks, like, what's the transition from one sign to the next like? So I would say for the most part, it's similar to Western, where anything going through those points between any signs is a little bit stronger and intensified.
Okay. Okay.
And you can take on the energy of, let's say someone has a sun in, we'll just say 0 degrees Pisces.
We're still talking Vedic, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this will apply both ways. The way I view it, at least, because every astrologer has their own little nuances they bring to their readings. So let's say someone has sun at 0 degrees Pisces. To me, that's like the strongest degree of any sign. And so like they will be like a true and true Pisces.
Okay.
No matter what else is going on in their chart, that will be really strong. Or some people, like their sun sign is sort of because there's other things that are so much stronger going on in their chart and the chart dynamics.
Correct.
So that I would say applies to both.
Okay. Yeah, because I was looking at that when we set the date to do this. It's like, wow, we're in the full moon, but we're actually transitioning signs. So that was one of the questions. It's like, let me ask that for her. Is there an energy shift that someone would feel Vedic-wise from? Because we're going to
say only if you had a planet, or specifically the sun and moon, in that on the cusp.
Okay.
Or maybe your ascendant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the other question I have is, let's see, I have to be careful how I word this too. When I was doing my research this weekend, I was looking at, I looked at your site, but I also wanted to look at other sites to get different perspectives. And the one thing, there's one person who said that Vedic astrology versus Western astrology. She was saying that Vedic astrology was more of the mind. It's like how people, it's the energy that someone processes when they have their signs and when they're doing Vedic astrology. And she was saying Western astrology is more, it's more of the emotions. It's more of, it's related to life down here. Does that make sense? First off, how
that makes sense. I think I just say it in a different way, but I think we're probably thinking the same things.
Okay,
so
please tell me.
Vedic astrology is, on the one hand, more spiritual. It's more focused on karma and our journeys through life.
Mm-hmm.
And Western astrology is more psychological. And that's a fine line between psychological and spiritual for me, but it's more psychological and hence more emotional, and is much more, to me, more earthly, because it's based on the seasons.
Correct.
It is very much more about our experience in this life, where Vedic astrology is more about our soul's experience, where Western is more our like ego identity's experience.
Right.
But at the same time, Vedic astrology, because it can be used, like it's often used as a highly predictive, everyday prediction type of tool, then it becomes very much about our ego's existence in the physical realm.
Okay.
But I will say, like, I think, I don't know who this is, but if she's saying it's more of the mind, I kind of equate that with more of the spiritual life, the non-tangible life, where the mind is non-tangible. And Western is a little bit more on the physical, tangible life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Either to read any area of life, right? Yeah.
Would you say Vedic past lives? It's more that it could emphasize your previous life, if you believe in that kind of.
Yeah. So karma is a big part of it.
Wow.
It comes with the premise that you're born into this life bringing the experience of your soul from other lifetimes. And there's, your karma from past lives. There's karma that you must fulfill. That's in play. You can't really change. Although I always point out, you always have a choice in how you react to it.
Correct.
And then there's karma that you create in this life that you may fulfill in this life or other lifetimes. And there's sort of like everything in between.
Wow.
So it's very much about your lessons and the challenge. Well, they're usually challenges, right? Karmic experience, they're challenges. Yeah. They're usually not like, oh, I won the lottery, although that can be part of it.
But that's luck.
What's going to help you grow as a spiritual being? And it's through the challenges of the physical life.
That probably explains when people I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut.
Go ahead. I was done.
That probably explains when people who have an understanding of Western astrology and they start exploring Vedic astrology, like me, I have an app I forgot to tell you about when we first started talking about this. And I went through the chart. Whoa, there's so much information there.
Yeah.
But I want to mention karma because some of the planets in relation to my chart make reference to past karmic actions. So my point, what I was going to say is when people from Western astrology explore Vedic astrology, I get the impression that a lot of them aren't happy when they find out what their Vedic placements are, and especially when they start going into detail about where the planets are in the houses, because it gets really to, it's a form, I won't say it's judgment, but it really gets into like, it's more than what you're getting in Western astrology. We're talking about, like you're saying, the soul, what you've done in the past. And that's something that Western astrology doesn't really,
it doesn't get into a little bit more with evolutionary astrology. And I actually do look at karma at Western because I'm influenced by my Vedic practice, right? But yeah, it can be challenging for people who are like so used to the Western system, and then they like, oh, let me get a Vedic reading. And I'll add this in, like from my observation and from my own experience, a lot of Vedic astrologers can be very doom and gloom in the readings. And I think that's because of looking at the karma, and it can be very cut and dry.
Yeah.
But I see it as everything has positive and negative. And one side might be weighted a lot more than the other because of what's in the chart or the karma. But there's still the other side. It's never all like this is all bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to happen. Or, you know, there's also like remedies that I don't use in Vedic astrology. It's like you must go to a river on a Tuesday and put an offering into it at noon for 10 weeks, you know. It's not, I don't see it as so cut and dry because you have those possibilities. Like our charts, I often call it a roadmap or sort of like a blueprint. And you can decide to turn here or turn there.
Yeah.
You might have to go in one direction for a while, and that's sort of like karma you must experience. Like you got to go in this direction. But then there's often like a side street or a crossroads, and it's navigating that chart. You are limited by the chart.
Yeah.
And I could say, you often say like anything's possible, but you are kind of limited by your chart to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
But the chart has so many possibilities.
Yeah.
And more possibilities than we could all experience in a single lifetime.
Yeah.
And that's where free will comes in, like our choices. That's how we alter karmic paths. We take that left turn instead of the right turn, or we hit that crossroad and we decide to go one direction, or we decide to go backwards. That happens too. So it's, there's lots of possibilities in it. Yeah. But that cut and dry kind of doom and gloom of how sometimes Vedic is presented can turn off a lot of people.
Yeah. It's the app that I found, it emphasized a little bit of the past, but it also showed, you know, what changes can be done because of the placements and whatnot. So it's like, it's anything when it comes to any form of divination practice, from tarot to runes, to any kind of spiritual crafting. If someone's coming to you for guidance, you know, and we had already talked about this too, you're just there to, you know, to guide the person, share the information of what you're getting, what you're reading, what you're feeling intuitively. And it's up to the person, the receiver, to either take it and you know, make these changes, or just let it go and then see how life goes. We don't have any responsibility when it comes to stuff like that. So it's, again, this is not really my mantra. You take it with a grain of salt, you know, but for people that are really looking for serious changes and they go through astrology and whatnot, and especially with Vedic, it's right there. And this is the one of the other questions I wanted to ask, because I wasn't too clear on this, is are they the sections, the charts. Let me reword this.
Yes.
There's D1, D2, D4. It goes like to D45.
And it's not like every number. But yeah, those are the divisional charts.
Okay.
Yeah, and the number is determined by, because I didn't have to learn all the math because there's programs. Like it's determined by something, the mathematics of it. So those are divisional charts. And each divisional, so the D1 is what's called your Lugna chart, which is your ascendant chart, which is what I use. Astrologers also use the moon chart, so the moon determines the first house. That's called a Rashi chart. But the D1 is basically your birth chart, your ascendant chart. And then the other divisional charts are certain areas of life, like peeled open like an onion. So you can have, there's like the most common one is the D9 because it's the most auspicious, called the Navamsha, and that just means ninth chart.
Okay.
Nav is 9. And I use it mostly to look for alleviation of challenges in the birth chart. I also see it as how someone can mature over time and what they can potentially grow into outside of their birth chart.
Huh. So would this be with this chart, D9, would this be not the remedy, but would this be the chart, like you were saying, to go to just better the person's soul, their spirit?
Yeah, actually, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're kind of, well, if the person follows the advice of the D9.
If they do, yes.
Right, yeah. And be like, oh, well, it shows, if someone's like, I don't know, let's say they have the ruler of their 10th house, whatever it is debilitated. You can look to the D9 and be like, oh, it's exalted, that planet from the birth chart. And then you can look at the 10th house of career in the D9 as well and see how that plays out and be like, oh, well, that ruler is in its own sign. And so your career is going to get better. It's like, but the person has to like think positively, like, okay, it can improve, it can get better. If they're like, oh, my 10th house of career ruler is debilitated, my career is weak, I'll never go anywhere, and they stick to that, because sometimes it's about your mentality and your beliefs. I stick to that. It just may be like every little blow puts them down, But sometimes karma does its own work and someone's life turns around.
Yeah.
Too. So there's so many variables. And I think a lot of people come to astrology and they want a cut and dry answer.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not that easy.
Yeah.
There's definitely 10.
We froze there for a second, Julianne. Let's see, hang on one sec.
Who is there? We're back.
Okay. There we go. All righty.
Well, our voices were still going, so I think that was fine. It's just our pictures went away.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, yeah, there's lots of possibilities. And then to me, that's where free will comes in. There is some element of fate, but the like absolute written in stone, no matter what type of things, are very rare. Very rare. It's usually a balance of like, okay, here's the karmic course of this, and how are you going to express your free will to alter it, as in learn those lessons or keep repeating them. Okay. Yeah.
So remedial wise, the divisional charts, the numbers, so forth, they address the moon sign separately, the sun sign separately, the planets separately,
the houses
separately,
because they represent area, and it's not like D1, D2, D3, D4 per house. It's there's a divisional chart for children, and one for the career one is success. It's D10, and I don't have all the numbers memorized because I don't use them all that often. But like, yeah, it's by area of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's the houses peeled apart and broken down. And that's the best way to describe it. Yeah.
Okay. So it goes into more detail of the houses.
Yeah,
And
if someone's asking about their children, there's a divisional chart for children or offspring.
Okay.
Or sometimes it would say, it's like a legal term. I forget what the word is. It's also a legal term for the same thing. Or, you know, yeah, one for success and one for marriage and so on. Yeah.
I mean, just like I said, doing a little bit of my research and speaking to you, it's like I really would like to push people to explore this, because then they'll probably find some things that are missing that they're not getting in their Western astrology readings or whatnot. They'll go to this, and first off, their signs may be different. Doesn't necessarily mean, like, my sun sign in Western is the same as Vedic.
So you checked, yeah?
I did check, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, again, it's the position.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you know what? I don't want to deviate too much. My ascending sign is shown in the sign of Aries. But when I look at this particular app, it's saying that it's Taurus. It's saying that's Aries/Taurus. So I'm wondering if it's...
Is it 0 degrees? 0 degrees Taurus? It would have to be like right at that 29 0 degree. Sometimes they say 30 degree, but...
Oh, I'm sorry. It's my sun. It's my sun. So it's titled Kritika.
Kritika? Mm-hmm. That's one of the nakshatras.
And this is... No, it is my sun.
Does it give you the degree of your sun sign?
Like, yes, it's 26 degrees, 40 minutes, I believe.
Of Aries?
Aries. And then 10 degrees to 0 minutes in Taurus.
Oh, so it's giving you the nakshatra. Oh, your sun is in Kritika nakshatra.
Yeah.
The app's name was Kritika, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting.
But it places it as my sun sign in Taurus.
No, but your sun is Aries, but the nakshatra of Kritika, because they don't match up, because there's 27 nakshatras spread throughout the 12 zodiac signs. There's about 2.5 per sign, like the moon moves through one nakshatra every 2.5 days. Or every solar sign every 2.5 days, and that takes up 3-ish nakshatras. Now I'm confusing myself. But anyway, so if your sun is at 26 degrees Aries, you're an Aries sun. But you're in Kritika nakshatra, which spans the 2 suns.
Okay.
It's like I need a visual, because when I start being like, I'm like, I need to see it, and then I'm like, okay, got it.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about this offline. Because I have the app here. And then when I go to it, it says Taurus 22 minutes, 50. Wait, this is seconds. The quotation is 50. Is it seconds?
It's minutes.
We're slowing down again.
Let's just say that it's fine.
We'll give it a minute. It's rebuffering, Julianne.
It's fine for me. So it's, oh wait, I just buffered for a sec.
Okay, there we go. Slowly.
Okay. Too much internet activity.
I don't know. I'm in the mountains.
Okay, we'll talk about that later. Yeah, so I can do the visual. But if your sun's 26 degrees Aries, you're an Aries sun in Vedic. It's just the nakshatra your sun is in also goes into Taurus.
Okay.
That's why, that's the degrees, 26, 40 to 10.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to say, like, if anyone from the, from Western perspective wants to dive into Vedic, just start with your birth chart. Don't like go into it and pull up all your divisional charts and your Dharma chart and like the Sudarshan chakra, and like just start with your birth chart, because if you learn how to read that, then you can read all the divisional charts.
So that's the basis.
Just learn how to read your birth chart, because once you can read that chart, you can read everything else.
Okay.
And just, if you need it, that's why I wrote this book, Shedding Light on Judgment. So it's Vedic Astrology for Beginners. And it just goes through all the foundational stuff you need to read a chart. Mm-hmm. And if you have that, basically you can read a chart and you can go deeper with the information that's in here. And then once you got the signs, you got the houses, you got the planets, you get a good grasp with the nakshatras. Yeah. 27 more signs is a lot to memorize. They're rulers and they're deities and this and that. Then you have that, you can read any divisional chart, mm-hmm. which doesn't have, the divisional charts are a little simpler. Yeah. They don't have all the degrees and everything. It's just the planet in the sign, in the house. You can read those. You can read the dasha charts, which is like it's not really transits, but that's how I always equate it. It's just a planetary chart that shows stronger emphasis of certain planets during certain periods of your life.
Does your book, is it a companion guide? That's probably the best way to describe it. Is it a companion guide to the Vedic decks that you created?
It is a companion guide. So for those out there wondering, I have a Vedic Astrology Oracle as well as a Vedic Astrology Study Deck.
Can you tell us the difference between the two?
So the Oracle, well, I'll just show some. It's easier to just show some cards. So originally I was just going to make one deck, and then a friend's like, oh, because I was like just showing her images. She's like, oh, it's too busy for me. I just want the basic information. She's like, how about you make two decks? How about you make an Oracle and a Study deck? I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, oh, that was like 180 something, I don't know, like 100 something cards. I'm like, okay, thanks for doubling my work, but I'm going to do it. So, the Oracle was my original idea. And I have a lot of the nakshatras here in front because I'm working on a course. So they have, like we have the Bhadra nakshatra has keywords. It has the symbol of the nakshatra.
This is the Oracle deck, correct?
This is the Oracle deck.
Okay.
And then the planets, we have the solar system in the background, just up to Saturn, because there's no Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. But I do have cards for Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in the Oracle deck, but not the Study deck, because the Study deck is specifically for study. And traditionally, these planets aren't. But it's because it's an Oracle, those are like 3 extra cards. Okay. So I have Uranus, which represents Brahma, Neptune is Vishnu, and Pluto is Shiva. So it gives the keywords, use it as an oracle, but you can also use it for study. But the Study deck is a little bit more detailed. Let me move out of the way. So it doesn't have the symbol for the nakshatra because I have it here. I'm like reading backwards. I'll give the degrees of where it is.
Okay. Ruled by Saturn.
Ruled by Saturn, and the symbols, and then the same keywords that are on the Oracle cards, because they sum up what this nakshatra is about. So you see that, and then a little bit simpler on the signs.
Okay.
But I give information like ruled by Mars, cardinal fire, symbols, keywords. These are all in order. So let me see. Show some variety here.
So similar to Western astrology.
Yeah, the houses are, I mean, what the houses, the signs and planets represent is fairly similar. There's a little bit slight differences, but for the most part, it's the same. But it's how you put it together and read it. So the Study deck has more details on the cards because it's for study. And the Oracle doesn't have like degrees and rulership on it. It just has the keywords because it's designed as an Oracle, but you can still use it for study because it has the symbols on it, like the pictures. And so when I was writing this is the second edition. When I was writing this, I already knew I was probably already had a mind to create a deck, one, not two. And so with all that in mind, yes, this is a companion to the decks, but you don't need it. There's also a little white book that comes with the decks, with also even spread samples and things like that. But if you have a study deck and you want to know more than just those keywords, yeah, get the book. It also has like the nakshatra have deity rulers or gods that rule them as well, and those aren't on the cards because you normally don't think about that outside of planetary rulership when looking at astrology.
Yeah, but it's good to have that extra information.
Yeah, it's extra information. It gives you more feeling for what a nakshatra is about.
Okay.
Basically. But the planets themselves are gods too. So.
Do you offer exercises in your book?
No, there's not exercises like a workbook, and that's because I also am working on courses. So right now I have a mini course. It's only $11, and then it's called Shedding Light on Your Karma and Dharma through Vedic Astrology, and it goes through how to read all the things in a chart that indicate karma and dharma, like
so this is like
axis, the nodes, and I say in there like, really, your birth chart, the whole thing is karma. Because that's part of the reincarnation premise for the astrology, is that you're born at a certain time and a certain location, which kind of determines your chart because it's a map of the skies. So you have this is just the moon, but you have a specific blueprint or roadmap to guide you in the life you're being born into based upon karmic experiences of the past and the karma your soul wants to create. So if we didn't want to keep creating karma, we wouldn't
be here.
Yeah, we wouldn't be here. We'd be a star in the sky, Yeah. Yeah, that's the premise of it. So yes, they're companion tools, but you don't have to buy all of them if you're just like, oh, I just want an oracle deck that's based on Vedic astrology. Cool. But if you want to know more with a book that's geared with those in mind, yes, it's a companion book.
I think the course that you're offering, how long is it for? Is the course like?
It's at your own pace.
Okay.
So people can purchase it and they can go back to it until Teachable goes bankrupt or something. So it's always there, basically. And I have there's a few PDF excerpts from the book on there.
Okay.
That's applicable stuff. There's one worksheet on there. And it's like an hour and a half of video content. So it's a mini course. I'm working on a nakshatra course. And the reason part of my brain is like a little confused on nakshatras is because I did get the Tarot of the Holy Light.
You did?
I got it, and I've been looking at the astrology on it, and I'm like, my brain is like, and then my brain's like, wait, that's so different from the Golden Dawn associations. And so my brain is like, the past couple of days, because I just got it, is all like churning all this stuff. And that's why it's helpful for me to have a chart, because I'm like, oh wait, here's the system I'm in. But if I'm not looking at something, my brain's like,
That's where my mind has been the last few weeks, because just to slightly deviate, I got two decks, Unified Esoteric Tarot and the Aquarian Hermetic Tarot, which is, there's not really a name for the system of how these decks were put together.
I was looking at that because I saw it on your Instagram.
It's the person's from Romania, and he says that he's been working on this for 25 years. He's put his, a good chunk of his life into this. And the placement, like I was going through the deck last night, I mentioned about Virgo and the High Priestess. And I had to really, this guy put all his time, and there's a valid, not reason, but there's logic to him why these signs are placed in different archetypes from the tarot. So I didn't want to cop out and go, no, there's no way the High Priestess can be, related to Virgo. There's a relationship to it. So basically, there's no book. There's no book with these things.
Oh no.
So you have to have some knowledge or good knowledge of the archetypes, what they mean individually, and the signs and their personalities.
I'm curious about that deck. I might get it, but then like like I should not have looked at Tarot of the Holy Light once I got that like yesterday, because like my brain's been all like, and I'm like, no, like
yeah. I think that's my study deck, and I'm still only at the first chapter of this book, and I've spoken to Christine Payne Towler, who's the author of this deck. And when I talk to her, I'm not dissing her at all. She's a wonderful woman. Talking to her is like reading the book. She goes, there's a book for this specifically, and it's for
I have it on order.
Yeah. It's the only way. Oops. That was my cat.
I got the deck, and it's like, I know there's two ways to lay out the deck in rulership. And the Golden Dawn way is planets in a certain order. It's like Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, Moon, and then I think it's Saturn, Jupiter.
Yeah.
Is that all of them? Because I do that, and then I'm like, because the nakshatras are in orders too, and I'm like, wait, what's the nakshatra one? And I have to go in my head. I'm like, okay, Rahu, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. Okay, because they're like totally different. But this goes by, the decans are broken down by the same elemental rulership. So let's say, like the first decan of Aries is ruled by Mars, because Mars rules Aries, and then the next fire sign Leo, it's the Sun, and then Sagittarius, Jupiter. Right. Except in the Tarot of the Holy Light,
they're different.
That's what they do, but they do it, the cardinal ace, 2s and 3s, fixed 4, 5, 6, immutable 7, 8, 9s, and then 10 is just the element, where usually it's the aces are just the element.
Correct.
First, and then the cardinal are 2, 3s, and 4s, and the fixed are 5, 6, and 7, and the mutables are 8, 9, and 10. So it's like shifting it all a card, and it's really like my brain is like, but totally alters the meaning of the card. Yeah, that's like, but I love it, but it's just like, okay, I got to figure this out. And so my brain is all like this. I do this as like cogs in a wheel, like trying to figure it all out.
It's unfortunate because it's a deck full of information, obviously.
Yeah.
And the imagery is just, wow. I love it.
I haven't even delved into the imagery yet, because I'm like stuck on the astrological associations and how it shifts down a card number, and like,
just take it easy with that deck because of what it is. And that's what I was about to say, is that's the unfortunate side. Not a lot of people know about the deck, but the few people who've tried, they can't connect because they can't get out of that routine of thinking normally, no, it's the decon for this. And
well, to me, like, I'm learning this deck with this system. It doesn't mean I have to override the system in other decks that I use, or the way I personally, because there's a little shift, I personally associate some astrology with the tarot. And what I like about Tarot of the Holy Light is because the core card associations are exactly how I personally view them and how I set them up in my medieval sigils tarot.
Really?
It's all sigils, and I don't tell people, but that's like, well, it's also the same as the Hermetic tarot has the same court astrological association set up. Okay. Well, it's iffy on the Hermetic because people go back and forth because it's based on Thoth and are the knights and princes, which one's the king and which one's actually the knight. But the way I see it and use it, it matches what I do.
Yeah. So. Christine was saying to me when I was trying to get into her mind, like, how can you simplify the astrology that you have in the tarot deck? Mm-hmm. And I asked her a few more questions. She goes, read the first 50 pages of the book, and that's all you need. Okay. Once you read the first 50 pages of the book and you start looking at the cards, it'll make sense.
Actually, go ahead, sorry.
Because she was saying that, and the book's right over here, but I'm not going to go around. She was saying to me that the astrology is like the historic. it's Western astrology, but it's going before it is right now, pre-Christian era, I believe. It goes way back, quite a few thousands of years. So she's using that, if I understood correctly.
On a certain time period?
Yeah, if I understand correctly.
Probably like, I would guess maybe from Babylon, but
I don't know if it goes that far back.
Interesting.
But she was saying that's why you're seeing some of the signs, like temperance we normally see with Sagittarius is actually a different sign, and people are just like, what?
Yeah, the majors are all different.
Yeah.
I haven't even like worked with that yet. And I'm like, oh.
And the majors is the last part in the book.
If it goes back, you know, to BCE era, that's before Western astrology was fixed.
Maybe.
And so that's why I'm asking, like, what time period, because that tells you like where the planet associations are. That's so interesting. But it's interesting, like one thing I want to point out is like the astrology in tarot is all Western astrology. It's not Vedic astrology, because that was
the
all
first person to make that happen. Try. Do you think that's possible, Julianne? Could you actually create, here's your project.
Vedic astrology tarot deck?
Yes.
I mean, I could. I would still think I probably would feel the same signs and associations would go with it. And it's just because when modern tarot, you know, since like the Golden Dawn, basically, so the last 100 years or so, that's when astrology was associated with it, you know. So it's a Western astrology viewpoint connected with the tarot. So it's like taking like esoteric astrology and applying it to the system of tarot. Yeah. I don't think it would be any different. It would just be like a Vedic looking deck or something.
That's the premise with the Oracle deck. But then you would have to
associate it with certain tarot cards. And I don't think I could in my brain separate
like the archetypes.
Yeah, the archetypes. Like, yeah.
You can read, how about using we got a project here in the works. Using the gods and goddesses in history.
But I mean, I have Sacred India Tarot and the Sacred Indian Tarot that already do things like that.
Okay.
So it would be hard to like if I make something, I want it to be unique. I don't want it to be like another one of this.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm artistic, but I'm not an artist. So like, I would never make like another RWS deck in just my own style of drawing.
Yeah.
Because there's like hundreds out there, right? So it would have to be like different in some way. One, to like spark my interest and to sustain my creative passion in it. Like, has to be like, oh, this is a cool idea. Let me do this.
You have the knowledge. It's just visually to interpret that knowledge into a deck. That's why I was thinking the gods and goddesses would be perfect, because are all the deities are they related
in the astrology? I don't think so.
Okay.
Like, I don't know all the like, I didn't grow up in India and as a Hindu, so I'm sure there's just the more common ones.
Okay, didn't mean to throw that in there.
No, but it's interesting. Because I know it's been attempted with like the decks I have. It's been attempted, especially like the Sacred India Tarot, because like the majors are gods and goddesses, and then like the cups are the story of Shiva and Parvati. And then I always forget which is which, but the wands and the swords are the story of the Ramayana and Mahabharata. I think it's that order, wands and swords. They call it staffs and arrows in that deck. And then the pentacles, it's the life of Buddha. Yeah, well, because he comes from India, really. So it's the life of Buddha. I don't know. I'd have to like sit and look at all those majors and like compare. maybe someday. Maybe someday.
It's one of those
it's one of those things I'll let it sink in. I could see me doing it, but I'd have to see like how could I make it something that is unique and isn't already out there.
Well, this would be like a research trip, which means you go to India, wait till your little girl gets a little bit older and stuff, do a trip to India, do research and stuff. But I was just, when we start talking about the Tarot of the Holy Light and how it's a different form of astrology, the Unified Esoteric Tarot, it's Attila's own interpretation. It's also based on the Kabbalah and other aspects, but it's his interpretation. And she's like, yeah, why not, Julianne? It'll probably be like 10 years,
you never know. It's like things like percolate for a long time, and then like I start working on them, and then like it's like waiting for the right time, which could be a month later, it could be 5 years later, and then like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, look what I made. Like people are like, what? Yeah, people are like, what? It's been percolating for a long time. It's not like I did it all yesterday.
Well, you hear some deck creators that one deck that I have, the woman who created the deck said it took 10 years for her to create the deck because she was going through a lot in her life, and it held her back from creating the deck, and she had to process and heal from it and continue. So it was it's a decade of stuff. Yeah. So
that's what my first deck was. My Fine Lines Oracle, or Fine Lines Meditation cards is what I call them. Like that was an idea. What started as a book idea, like 2008 or something like that. And then I was I don't know, like 5 years ago, I thought, this would be better as cards. Like I just hadn't written the book. Like I felt like stuff was percolating. And then I was like, no, this would be better as cards. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up writing a workbook, which is basically kind of what the book would be, but condensed into a workbook for it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Do you feel you're more of a writer or an artist?
A writer, yeah. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I used to draw a lot, and I studied art in high school. Mm-hmm. And then I didn't do anything artistic for like 20 plus years. Oh, wow. And so it's like that's coming out, and it's like coming out more and more. And another deck I'm working on is an oracle deck. I would like to just actually draw or paint completely a deck. But it has to be the right one. Because the other one I'm working on, I thought, oh, this would be cool to draw this. But there's a lot of abstract concepts. And so I think I'm going to have to do like digital collage. I love that because I don't like piecing things together.
It's refreshing.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. I'll just keep talking because I think it's going. So it's really fun to do that. But I would like to possibly like draw and paint some sort of deck.
Okay. So your heart's still into creating. It's just the framing of everything and making it.
But I do see myself more as a writer, which is kind of, I'm focusing on writing when I have time, which I haven't had much. I'm writing a book on schizophrenia. So nothing to do with astrology or tarot. And this is something I've wanted to write for years. Another thing is just kind of waiting for the right time, because it's about schizophrenia, but my sister's the subject because she has schizophrenia. And it was like I had to experience some more things with her before like the universe said, or my higher self said I was ready to write it. So that's when I have quiet time. That's what I'm supposed to be working on, and I'm not exhausted. So yeah, I do see myself more as a writer. And I never set out to be a deck creator. I never once thought, oh, I want to be a deck creator. Mm-hmm. And the only deck I really had in mind from the start, like before this past year, to create was my children's tarot. That was like, I don't know, like I think 6 years ago now, or 7 years. I thought, it would be great to make a deck just for kids.
I thought you already had a deck.
I do, yeah. And so it took I had the idea. I actually wrote the guidebook for it. It's a guidebook / coloring book, like I don't know, 6 years ago. And then the process was looking for an artist. Like I started drawing it myself, and I was like, it doesn't have the look I want it to have.
Mm.
And I went through like 3 different people that I knew who were more artistic than me, and they all just were like, 2 of them just dropped off the planet. I thought I'd be waiting, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I got this going on. Okay, no problem. There's no rush. And then it was years, and then I had my daughter, and so I couldn't do it. And so it wasn't until after she was born, and actually just hired a graphic designer to take my sketches and ideas and make them, give it the look I wanted the deck to have. But that's the only, like, before this past year now, or 2 years, that where I was like, oh, I'm going to make this deck. And I thought that would be it. I never really had a plan to like be, a deck creator, but that's what I've become. So that's kind of, again, that's opened up my artistic creative side.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah. This is the wonderful thing when you're doing this kind of practice and work. You're constantly exploring, you're discovering new things. I don't know why in the last month I've just fallen with the astrology, tarot, because when I first started my practice with the tarot, I knew astrology was out there. You have the horoscopes and stuff.
Yeah.
But I wasn't into it. It's just like, no, the tarot is where I feel the energy is strongest for me to work with. And then as time went on, and I started seeing that astrology symbology and details were being incorporated into tarot decks, I was just like, wow, so there is a relationship going on with astrology and tarot. This is, again, back, I find decks like, wow, like Robert M. Place, he uses alchemical symbology and also astrology. And it's just like, wow. So I start building an interest towards astrology. And then within the last few months, I just got really fascinated with the decons. Because, we got the Saturn and Saturn and Aries, and it's whatever decon it is. I don't have my chart here either because, for every...
Yeah, I don't have those memorized. Usually it's just like it's on the card, right?
I have to. That's the funny thing.
Well, I mean, because I know the order that, like I said, like Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury. I know that order, but like some cards I know just because I put it to memory, but I couldn't off the top of my head go through the whole tarot and say what all the deck and rulership are.
I think I can once, because now we're going from August into September. So we're now in the 0-10 degrees. And I think this is for, I am going to look here. I
could write it out because I know the order everything goes in.
Well, this week, September 2nd to the 11th, this is the Golden Dawn attributions. 10 to 20 degrees, Venus in Virgo. So for the month of Virgo, the sign is the same. It's just the planets change every 10 degrees until we get to 20 to 30. So,
and what card is that?
For this,
that's what I wouldn't be like. I'd be like, wait. I'm like, I'm like,
take a guess. Do you want to take a guess? It's for September 2nd to the 11th. Venus in Virgo. This is the Golden Dawn.
Right. So it's mutable. So it's going to be an 8, 9, or 10. Venus in Virgo.
You got the numbers right.
9 of Pentacles.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So that's the way you see it. Whatever sign.
Yeah, and that's not me looking at the cards in mind. That's just like, okay, the energy of Venus and what's she like in Virgo. Oh, that's like, knowing it's going to be an 8, 9, or 10.
Right. But here's the interesting thing. In the Unified Esoteric Tarot, I believe it's Saturn in Virgo. It's a completely different planet. And so...
Interesting. So they don't go by that order of the Golden Dawn of how the planet...
No. Attila uses a different system. We still stay in the same sign for that month, but the
Oh,
planet.
but see, that must be the elemental system. Oh, did you say it's elemental tarot? So, because Virgo's an earth sign, and it's the second decan. So, after the next earth sign after Virgo is Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn.
It is.
Yeah, so that's the system that's. See, I love, like, I always thought when I was a kid I'd be a great, like, code cracker. Like, I like to find the patterns and things.
Yep.
So I actually, like, I prefer
to
find the patterns than
Yep.
just, like, memorize things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like, I'm trying to, like, figure out the tarot of the holy light and then, like, convert back to nakshatras, and my brain's like, I'm like pattern disconnect, you know. It's like,
well, like you were saying, you want to try and relate it.
Yeah, I want to figure out why it's a certain way, and then like I can be like, oh, Venus Virgo, it must be like 9 of Pentacles. So I can, to me, that's a much preferred way to learn it than to just memorize like da 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 da. You know,
I think if someone wants to, especially since I've just been working with this, if someone wants to start bringing in the decans into their tarot practice, start with the Golden Dawn.
Yeah.
I think
because that's the most common.
Yes.
And it does follow sort of an accepted Western astrology breakdown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can relate it to not all the decks that are out there, because I tell people when I did my series, I think the Golden Dawn attributes work well with the Rider-Waite-Smith system. In the sense that you can visually look at the cards and look at the 9 of coins, and then it's Venus and Virgo. No, yeah, Venus and Virgo, and just study the card and just get familiar with the attributes of Virgo, the planetary personality of Venus, and mesh those two together. You know, you're going to have to spend time with each card. And so, but if you get like a contemporary deck that shows, I don't know what a contemporary version of 9 of coins would be. It's just not going to make sense astrologically.
Well,
I would think.
You have like my scrying poetry tarot. Would that be like? I think it would probably come through because it's basically an RWS deck in poetry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as there's that relationship, but you know, don't go in a deck. Don't go in a direction where the theme of the deck could sort of throw you off.
Yeah.
But
I would say anyone out there listening who's like newish to tarot or even has been using tarot for a while, and the astrology is like, what? Like,
there's more to it. That's why I want to have
it. Or just like, we don't have, like, I didn't even like think about the astrological associations reading tarot for a long, I mean, I knew them, I learned them, but I didn't use them, and I actually still don't use them a whole lot when I'm doing a tarot reading. It jumps out at me like intuitively. And it just came up when I was like, there's so much, even like read it into.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I read it intuitively, I'm intuitively tapping into all those like archetypes and symbols and energies. It's not like I'm looking at a card and something totally off the wall comes in. So what my point was, like, so I didn't really like, and I don't often actually think of the astrology when I'm doing a tarot reading. And so if anyone out there is like, oh my gosh, I got to learn all this astrology for tarot, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. And I actually don't, I almost never like pull a card and be like, oh, this is ruled by Venus. Let's say Empress. This is ruled by Venus. There's a Venus person coming into your life. I never do that. Like, I don't associate that with like people in people's lives, not even with the court cards, really. It's more the energy of what the essence of that character is, rather than like, oh, someone, let's say it's a love reading, right? Oh, that's okay. You have cups. Oh, water signs coming into your life. I've never said that. So that's just not how I read it, even though I'm an astrologer.
Well, if someone comes to you and says, look, I want an astrology reading, but can you do it through the tarot? You would be able to do it.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, that's like a special I'm going to be running soon when I have time. Is to pull out the tarot cards that represent their sun sign and the decan. I might limit it to that and then seeing how that goes. Often, like my specials are little test runs for bigger readings I'm thinking of offering. So yeah, that's actually sort of like, you know, in the works. But yeah, it's possible. Yeah, totally. A full chart reading, like someone wanted a full chart reading, like every house, every sign, every planet. That would be hours long.
Yeah, I would do separate reading for all.
Yeah, I'm going to test run with just the sun sign and the decan it's in, and you know, the major associations, and just sort of like a little personality reading. And then like the bigger one I'll offer will be your ascendant, sun, and moon signs. And after that probably will take a full hour easily. Yeah.
I know we deviated a little bit.
That's okay. It's good conversation.
Yeah, I definitely want to keep it going. I just want to flash this to you. Look at this.
Ooh. Wait, it's glaring. What card is that? 9 of discs. Oh, 9 of discs. Yeah.
So I don't know if you got so much into looking at that.
I have the deck right here. Let me just find it so I can look at it closer. It's always the bottom card, right, when you're looking for a card.
Well,
yeah,
like
the Tower was associated with Capricorn. It's like, what?
Yeah, but think about it, right? It's like you have to start thinking differently and try to associate.
Yeah.
The planetary
star is Mercury. I ordered both books. There's 2 books. There's the main book, and then there's a second one.
Yeah, I think it's not the foundation. I think it's a book after.
Yeah, I decided to order both because they were good prices on Amazon. And I'm like, I may as well.
Good, I'm happy you found it.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so 9 of discs. It is beautiful. It's beautiful artwork and beautiful coloring. So this has Mercury in Virgo, right? Because it's all shifted down 1.
But it fits perfectly, right? Yeah. Virgo. So for me, that makes sense.
But I can see that it just shifts how you view coming about to the energy of that particular card. It's going to take me a while. I mean, I only had it like 2 days now. A day and a half.
Maybe randomly pull a card out, or if you want to work with.
Well, I'm using it for my daily reading now.
Okay.
That's how I usually get to know a Dune deck. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm using for my daily. Sometimes I just lay the cards and I never look at them the rest of the day. And sometimes I come back to it. It just depends on how much time I have. And I sit with it and I'm like, oh, interesting. But yeah, I've just got to learn it for the system it is and just this deck. But then it's like, look, it's like a whole new tarot. It's a whole new.
Yeah. I think we did a video a while ago. The decks that have different systems, or decks that you have that have different systems.
Yeah, or the system-free tarot. Yeah.
There you go. And I embrace that because it's just, like I said, it's wonderful to see another way of thinking and using the tarot with a different method.
Yeah.
And it expands it. It just makes you, like we're talking about, see and view the archetypes and all this in a different way, and you learn more from it. That's why I get so excited about it, because I'm the kind of person that when there's the Rider-Waite-Smith, you see the same thing over and over again. When my first deck was the atypical Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I had it for a long time, and then it's like, I'm bored with this deck. I need to move on. And then the second deck I got is the Gilded Tarot by Cyril Marchetti.
I used to have that one. I beat that one up.
That stayed in my life for like 10 years. And it got me through a lot of stuff personally. I read with it for myself, but a few readings for other people. And I've retired the deck because I can't, I don't connect with it anymore.
Right.
But I will not get rid of that deck because it was such an important part of who I am, and it guided me, you know. So it's one of these things, I can't get rid of this child, you know. It's been with me for a while. So but also it goes to show how we grow in our practice. You know, you start getting familiar with a certain style and rhythm. The next thing you know, you want to start doing Marseille decks. Marseille decks, I'm interested in. I don't know how to approach it.
I work a lot. Like, okay, so when I learned tarot, and for like many, so I first got my first tarot deck was a boyfriend at the time's deck, and it was like 24 years ago. So that's how long I've been working with tarot. There was a little break in there. I didn't know for at least half that time that there were different systems. I just thought it was just different cards and different pictures. Like in my mind, it wasn't like, this is how you read this and this is how you read that. My first deck was RWS, and the first book I read was the Book of Thoth.
Wow.
I didn't know it was like, and some people, not everyone reads it this way, but some people are like RWS here and Thoth over here and Marseille over there. And like, to me, it's all one.
Yeah.
And I can read a Thoth deck, which is kind of pippish usually, depending on the deck. And RWS, the same way I read Marseille, where you look at like the building of the numbers or the decreasing of numbers or how the numbers break down. Or is that character looking left? Is he looking right? And how are they interacting? Which sort of gets Lenormandish like. To me, it's like you can apply any of that to any deck, any system. It doesn't matter. It's what jumps out at me when I'm doing the reading.
Yeah.
And sometimes cards are very textbook literal. Sometimes like
the Tower,
or like the Judgment card. It's like a wake-up call.
Yeah.
You hear a loud horn, something like sometimes it's just really literal. Or let's say like Six of Pentacles, like, oh, someone's going to give you some money. But other times it's like, oh no, there's something about the esoteric balance and you're working between give and receive, and you know, it really depends on the reading, how the cards interact.
Wait till you get to the prayer of the holy light. That's going to
Yeah, well, because the imagery, like here we have Seven of Wands. It's totally different. It has, you know, all these, if people can see these symbols on the wands.
Yeah.
But the imagery, it's not RWS. It's its own sort of thing. It's sort of Thothy vibe to me. But like there's all these other like astrological images and symbols in all the pictures. So it's to me my first impression of it is it's a not just with the decan and the astrological associations written on them, that the whole deck is very much an astrological deck.
Really? That's how you feel.
There's lots of the cards like, yeah, watch, I won't be able to find them now. But well, just with all the symbolism, like the sun and moon kissing. What card is this? The Lovers, like. You know, what do
read the sign that it's in.
What's that?
Read the sign that the Lovers is in. It's not Gemini.
Right, it's Taurus. Like, then that, you look at the symbols on the card. I mean, there's so much elemental and astrological stuff going on. Like many of them have wheels in the background. That one has like a clock, or it's supposed to be an astrolabe. There's just a lot of astrological stuff, and I've barely looked at the images so far. That's just like my first, like, oh wow, okay. When I have time to sit down with this longer, I'm going to dive into this. But it's fascinating. Yeah,
it's for me, and I can understand from your background, you automatically pick up on the astrological aspects, and that's why I said, really, for me, I don't. There's a deck aesthetically. There has to be some sort of an appeal for me to get a deck. But
okay, so here, 6 of discs. I'm just pulling random cards. It's Venus and Taurus, or they say Taurus ruled by Venus, and it's, you know, platonic solace.
Wow. Yeah.
This one where, like, all the details of the symbolism are going to mean something.
Yeah.
We're not all decks are quite like that. And here's one with, you know, Kabbalah influence on the sun. So the Hebrew there. I used to know my Hebrew letters, but I don't anymore. I gotta relearn them. You know, death is still associated with water, but it's not Scorpio.
It's probably the sign previous to it.
Yeah.
Is it Libra?
No, it's just water symbol. It's not a sign. Because so I'm assuming they're not using Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which I haven't. If they're using the symbols, those were replaced by Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
I think in this deck they don't, because it's the older form of astrology.
Right. Yeah. So if it's older, I don't know, thousands of years ago, it's not going to have that. But yeah, I can't wait for the books. I'm like, now I'm like really intrigued. Like, what did they base this off of, and what does that tell you about astrology at that time? And so much.
Did you go to her website?
I'm sorry?
Did you go to her website?
You tell me. Like, wait, what?
For Christine, for Tarot of the Holy Light, she has a website, and she.
Yeah, I went to her website. I went to the site you told me, and it's just like a blog, and it was like really old posts. And then I just Google searched it and found where you actually order it. I forget where it was. Yeah, it was a little bit of searching from there.
Okay. Yeah, you were able to order it through her site, but I don't. I think for now, for some reason, you can't. I wasn't aware of that when I told you. That's what. But I mentioned that site because.
Well, I thought either it's sold out or she has only a few left.
Yeah.
I think that happened. So I just did a little bit more searching because I actually had. I mean, I put the book on my Amazon wish list, but I wanted the deck. I just put things there to remind myself, okay, if I come across this, I'd like to get it.
Yeah.
So I didn't know there was a new printing of the deck. So
I don't know what edition you got. This one I got about a year ago. It's the deluxe. Did you get the brick?
I got
style box.
I got the box. I didn't get the mini. I think it's the deluxe.
You show the book or the box.
And the little white book came on the outside.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is the box.
Oh, you have a different box.
Do you have the old box that matches?
Look at this.
Yeah, that's the old box.
Ah, okay.
This is how the book looks because, like, you know, it comes with this.
Oh, yeah, it's different.
Digital collage and art colors.
I have the white book. It's exactly what you have.
I think it doesn't. I think it's the deluxe because it wasn't the super small one. That's fine.
Okay.
Because there was a smaller version. I thought, no, I'll just get the bigger one.
Yeah, the package is completely different. I think it was.
Yeah, so it's bigger than regular tarot size.
Yes.
I'm probably like, I think it's 3 by 5, something like that. Yeah.
I want to jump back to Vedic.
Yes. Off track for I don't know what.
Okay. That's okay. This is how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk. Okay, one of the questions I had. Yes. Hi everyone, whoever's watching. This is Julianne Victoria, as you see here. She's an astrologer, artist, author, creator, wonderful woman. We were talking about Vedic astrology.
Yeah, we were a while ago.
Yeah. And this is the premise of our conversation, supposed to be, where we're talking about the relationship of Vedic astrology. And for this week, Aquarius into Pisces. Vedic, it's Aquarius. We're moving into Aquarius, full moon Aquarius. And Western, it's moving into Pisces. Mm-hmm. So one of the questions I want to ask is, let me see here. What's the relationship, let's see how I can state this, of the rising sign in Vedic astrology with the sun? I think I may have misphrased this. So if it doesn't make sense to you, I'll skip it. The relationship of the ascending sign, the rising, with the sun and moon signs in Vedic astrology. I don't know if that's even a question.
I'll just explain what they are, which is very similar to Western.
Okay.
So the rising sign or the ascendant, well, astronomically, it's the sign that's rising on the eastern horizon at your moment of birth. And for people watching, that's why you need like coordinates or your location of birth and the time to know what's rising. And it represents your birth, basically. So it's you, the physical form, the ego identity in this lifetime. So, and the ascendant is in the first house. It doesn't start the first house like in Western. It's in the first house, depending on its degree.
So the moon is the first house. It's not the sun.
No, the ascendant.
Sorry.
The ascendant is the first house in the Lagna chart. Lagna means ascendant. Which is how usually birth charts are pulled up, but sometimes astrologers will pull up a moon chart for you for your birth chart, and that's called the Rashi chart. And Rashi just means sign, like what's your moon sign. So the ascendant and the first house represent you. Is the house of the self. That's the same in Western. And so you can look at it for your physical things like health. Also appearance, but the moon is that too. So the ascendant is the name, the person you are in this life, the body you're born into. Mm-hmm. The sun represents your soul. It's called your soul significator. It's the part of you that goes from one lifetime to the next. There's also a personal soul significator in everyone's chart called the Atmakaraka. And that's the planet at the highest zodiacal degree in your chart. So it's different for each person. So that's another like strong planet for you. And then the moon represents your emotional mind or your emotions. But the moon reflects the light of the sun, your soul, through the physical form here on Earth. So it's not a separate entity, but you can see it almost as a mediator because it represents our emotions and our intuition. And that's sort of a bridge between like how we feel and react in this world and sort of like our intuitive guidance from our soul, our higher selves.
Yes.
So yeah, that's the best way to sum that up. So that's how they relate. Oh, I just answered it. That's how they relate. Yes.
But the priority is different though. The focus is on the ascending, correct?
Yes. The so Vedic astrology charts are either drawn up as the Lagna chart with the ascendant as the first house, or as a Rashi chart with the moon as the first house. It kind of depends on the astrologer. I think most do the ascendant as the first house because that's your D1, your first divisional house. Yeah, and the moon charts, from my observation and what I've experienced, are usually pulled up to do like daily horoscopes for people because not the moon in your moon chart, but the moon changes sign regularly. Right. And so it's the shifting energy if someone wants more of a day-to-day or what's going on this week horoscope, because that's what's going to shift, and maybe a planet, maybe not. Yeah.
It's still refreshing.
Yeah. I think we're okay. Stabilized. Oh, you again. I don't think our voice is stopped.
I don't know why it does this. I'm not. Are you plugged in using the Ethernet?
I'm not plugged in at all right now.
Okay. I was gonna do the Ethernet cable. Just one little side note. I was gonna do the Ethernet, which would probably make the signal go quicker, but because of where my lighting is, had to do it upstairs. So I'm wireless. So I was just wondering if you were.
I think it's okay. I think as long as our voices keep going.
Yeah. Your voice sort of gets muffled a little bit. I don't know why it's not happening to me, but it's whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just annoying that
okay, because sometimes things happen and then the actual recording is fine.
Oh, okay. So with playback, it may be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to let my office assistant out. 1 second.
Okay, I hear him.
Okay.
Another question, and then let's talk about the Vedic chart that you have
For the
to
moon,
discuss
yes.
about the placement of the full moon in Aquarius. Question I wanted to ask is, we talked about this earlier, is there an equivalent to the decans with Vedic astrology?
So a lot of people make the association between the decans and the nakshatras.
Decans, sorry.
But, well, we can say it either way. I think some people say decanates, right? But it's not really a correlation.
Okay.
They're both like, so the decans are actually breaking up the solar signs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a solar thing, the solar zodiac thing. The nakshatras are a lunar zodiac, which is separate from the solar, but they coincide and at some points overlap. So on the surface, it looks like they're both just breaking down the signs, but they're not the same thing at all. But a lot of people make that connection and think that that's what it is. But it's not like the lunar zodiac was developed to break down the solar signs into smaller pieces, because there's 27. Where in Western, the decans, there's 30. So it's, or 36. So it breaks them all down perfectly. So 3 per sign.
So you have to change. You have to extend something. You have to extend either the degrees to cover for the entire month. If it was
with the nakshatras,
yeah.
No, they don't do that. That's where the Gandanta points are, where they do coincide, and they both end. I think I said Jeshta for Cancer. Jeshta is the end of Scorpio. So Scorpio ends, and then Sagittarius begins. Like both the nakshatra and the solar sign end at the same time, but that's just where they coincide. But it's not like the nakshatras were created to break down the solar signs into smaller pieces. It's its own system. It's its own zodiac.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a separate zodiac. So there's like 2 zodiac belts, basically.
What's the other one?
The solar one.
Oh, the solar
sign. Even though in the sky they overlap, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they're crisscrossing each other. They overlap through them.
Okay.
So it's just smaller ones. Yeah, broken down.
Vedic astrology.
Based on what the ancient sages saw in the sky, because it's based on that. Yeah.
Tell me the chart that you have.
So I just printed up the chart for the full moon. Excuse me, let me get some water.
Go for it.
And if you're listening to this, I already posted my full moon video. I did do both Vedic and Western, so they're both up on my channel. So I just printed this up to look at it, to have something, because I like to have my visual, because too many systems and things going on in my head, and I'm like, wait, wrong one.
I feel
yeah. So I just printed this up in case we were going to talk about it. But we have the full moon in Aquarius in the nakshatra of Shatabishak in Vedic astrology. And Aquarius is that humanitarian sign, connecting to other people, compassion. In the chart, so I pull up a chart for my moon reading. So I do them every new and full moon, both one from each separate videos, one Vedic, one Western. And when I pull up the chart, I pull it up for the time of the new moon or the full moon, the exact time in my location. So it is sort of a pseudo horary method, because by doing that, I take into consideration the layout of the houses in these charts, where often a general reading, the astrologer will just set the first house at Aries and ignore the house placement and just look at the angles.
Oh.
For a general reading.
So there's different ways.
I do take into account the layout, because I'm seeing this as an event chart, even though the chart says birth chart, but it's an event chart. And so I want to know the house location that they pull up the chart. Even though I'm not just using whatever time I pull a chart, I'm using the time of the new and the full moon. So people have asked that recently, like there's like a lot to say in a comment on a video. So I just want to put that out there. So I do take into account the house placement. So in this event chart for the full moon, it's in the 11th house, which is about networking and connection and reaching out to other people. But it's in the nakshatra Shatabishak, and I mentioned in the video, it's like the crown chakra, because the symbol for that is the 1,000-petaled lotus.
Mm-hmm.
That's Sahasrara, right? This crown chakra. So it's about opening up spiritually and connecting to humanity, to sum that up. But you can listen to my video if you want me to go deeper. And I do always do oracle reading along with it. So I thought I would just pull that up. But there are like at least for us in Pacific time zone, you know, the full moon is at tomorrow night, the 1st, at 22:22 p.m. And that's those angel numbers.
Oh, wow.
And that time doesn't apply for people in other time zones.
You know that.
But it's interesting. I'm like, it's almost like, you know, the angel master numbers, if anyone's familiar, is like 11 and 22, and there's 33, but usually then people just skip to 40 forward.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't feel like that's insignificant. So hopefully that means there's a blessing for all the wildfires in California, and, you know, because it's angel blessings.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. And then there's 4 planets in their own signs. So
I saw that.
How people want to take,
and that's rare, isn't it? Not like extreme.
Sure-ish, yeah. So Mars is in Aries, Saturn is in Capricorn, Jupiter's in Sagittarius, Sun is in Leo. So it's like there's this at-home feeling. I think I mentioned this in my video. There's a strong at-home feeling, and the sense of at home as being one with God or spirit or the universe, however you want to phrase it. Which to me is like this feeling of feeling like things are getting back into alignment. I'll say it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, let me get my office assistant. He's back. That's my dog, if anyone's wondering. Come on in. You want to say hello?
Is this Koo?
This is Koo. Do you want to say hello?
Go ahead and tilt.
Hi,
sweetheart. Hi.
Hi.
He's kind of behind you.
No.
Oh.
Lie down here. That's my office assistant. He's always in here, unless he has to get up and go out to the bathroom or something. Yes.
Your inspiration.
Yeah. But he doesn't come back in. He's like, he always has to be with me. So, yeah.
The planets and the signs being in their own, home. Harmony, we're seeing. Now, would you feel that would be at a global level, or
that would be global? Yeah, because that is global. I mean, that's a chart.
Yes,
a map of the sky. So a Vedic astrology chart is a map of the sky at the time of whatever the chart is pulled up. A Western astrology chart is not, because it's a fixed system. So I want to point that out. Like, if you have a Vedic chart, like your Vedic birth chart is really exactly what is going on. Oh, the moon is right there. The full moon is like looking right at the full moon. Well, to me, it's in the full moon because it's the day before. It's exact tomorrow, or the 2nd for most people around the world. Yeah, so it's like, this is a map of the sky. It's the astronomy. And that map of the astronomy means something. Not just one thing, but it means like a gazillion things. And reading a chart is trying to figure out what, like, I kind of see this another way I say it more to myself than other people, is that this is God's guidance for the individual, or we'll say the moon, but an individual chart is like, this is what God's guidance for you in this life is. And all of it shows what can happen,
what's
to happen, maybe what's not to happen. And all the options you have along the way. And so it's like a tool to talk to God or spirit, the universe. I want to say it that way because it's like whatever term each person wants to use. I don't have a problem saying God. I know a lot of people kind of do, but like this is how to talk to God. Like, what should I do? Look at the transit. Where's my focus best put at this time in my life?
Yeah.
And what are my options with this? You know, should I focus on my careers and more energy there? It doesn't mean other things don't happen. Or it's like, you know, should I focus on finding that spouse right now? And it may be like, no, focus on you. You know?
Well, I think it's really important too, with those particular signs and planets being comfortably at home. And also we're in the month of Virgo, but it's actually, we're in the month of Leo then, right?
What's today? Yeah, we're in the month of Leo.
Okay.
Yes. There's like a 5-day overlap approximately.
Okay.
And I would, these planets being at home, because this is what's actually out there. Yes, it's global and applies to anyone, even if you're reading Western astrology and they're not.
Okay.
Right? Because this is what's actually out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then Western has its own layer of energy and archetypes to look at with all of this. Because with Western, I really look at the angles.
Yeah.
And the interactions there. They're referred to as drishtis, but it's basically angles, but they're looked at differently, and different planets have different drishtis. Like 2 signs away, like sextile. That's
similar to
usually, unless it's Saturn has a drishti, has a 3 house away drishti, so that would apply. But it's not called a sextile, and that doesn't apply to every planet in that relationship.
So the wording's differently. It's
the wording's different, and how they're viewed different.
Okay.
Like Saturn's drishti are 3, 7, and 10 houses away.
Okay.
So it just means, like in yoga, it's like you look, like often it's like, look at your thumb,
is your
toes or whatever. Your gaze, that's where your focus is put.
Yeah.
Like Saturn doesn't have a drishti in a trine. His drishtis are 3, which is a sextile, so 1, 2, 3 houses away. All planets have a drishti opposite, so 7, and then 10, which is a square. But it's not thought of that way in Vedic. It's just that's his drishti. There's no trine drishti. Though I have seen some, like, I'll call them modern Vedic astrologers who incorporate some Western stuff in Vedic. And you can, but then it's like, it starts to my brain, it starts to get like discombobulated, and I just start short-circuiting. I'm like, no, but
Would you say you have a classical background with Vedic astrology? Like,
yeah, I do tend to read. Well, I mean, I read kind of in my own way, like every astrologer does, but it is very traditional. Like, I don't include Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, though some astrologers do. Because I haven't felt a need to add them in, because there's the double rulership of Jupiter rules Sag and Pisces, and Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, and that works with how I read the chart.
Okay.
There are other things you can add in. Like I used to use, kind of called a shadow planet, because it's not an actual planet, but I'll call it a planet called Gulika, which is sort of like, you can call it like your Achilles heel. I used to include that in charts, but clients would get too hung up on it. And I'm like, the minor thing stopped. So I stopped using it. So there are some like other things you can include, but they're not common.
Okay.
And I haven't really felt like I need them, because then there's like, I look at the Navamsha chart and I look at the dashas, and on a rare occasion, I'll look at other divisional charts. But at the same time, I am of the school of thought that anything you want to look into, you can see in the birth chart.
Okay.
Anything you want to look at, like if you pulled up, let's say your D10, your success chart, which is basically career, you could still just read it in your birth chart. You don't have to go to those.
Okay.
Because then you peel the layers of the chart, and there are ways to, like, there are layers of charts in the birth chart. So let's say this isn't common, but I do occasionally get this question. Someone asks, let's say, about my mother-in-law.
Okay.
So the 8th house would be in-laws, because it's things you gain from your marriage, which is 7th house. And in-laws are things you gain. So you can look at 8th house as mother-in-law. And then the 8th house becomes the first house of your mother-in-law, and you count the houses around your chart that way. It's not the mother-in-law's chart. It's not her birth chart, but it's a way to look at that in your life. Or someone says, I want to ask about my child, technically firstborn, but it can be any children. 5th house is children. You say, let's say someone has one child. Okay, I want to ask about my child. I don't have their chart for whatever reason. And then the 5th house becomes the first house, and you read the chart for their child in their chart that way.
Wait, say that again. I followed it, but
the 5th house becomes the first house of their child in the parent's chart, and then you read through the chart that way.
So you're focusing on the child itself, but you're going to the
child using the parent's chart, just altering it, making that 5th house the first house.
Okay.
Or someone, yeah. So like you can layer it. You can also, first house is first year, second year, 12th house, 12th year, first house is 13th year, and all the way around. And you just count the years. So you can also like narrow down the years. I've never actually done that because I don't want people to get too hung up on trying to predict every little detail. Because I'm more about the karmic lessons and what can you learn? What are your struggles? What are your challenges? It's really more counseling. What are your challenges? Here's what you can do. Okay, there's good energy for your career coming in with this. What have you struggled with, and how can you help, support that coming in or whatever? So again, that's why I kind of stress, learn the birth charts, learn your birth chart. You don't really need to learn all that. It's interesting, and to me, it's like I'll be studying forever. And I study so many different things, so it's not like all I ever read and look at is astrology because I have multiple interests.
Yeah, because there's so much information that's coming in, and we talked about. Isn't there like a few planets or stars that they're discovering, but it's not really going to fit into astrology probably in our lifetime?
Yeah. I mean, if they're not in the zodiac belt, it's like, and because then there's the 13th sign Ophiuchus, and some of it comes in and overlaps a little Scorpio and a lot of Sagittarius. This is Western, a lot of Sagittarius. But it's above the horizon. Because I have a couple of astronomy apps, and I'll look up and, that looks like Jupiter. Let me check. Okay, yes, it is. And, you look at Ophiuchus and he's above the horizon of the zodiac. But you look at pictures online and he's dropped into it, which is interesting.
Wow.
My app could be off too. But
we get numerous apps.
There's a reason why it was not included. Many, 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 many hundreds of ancient astronomers or magi's didn't include it because it wasn't there part of it. But I do think Ophiuchus is interesting as sort of an overlap layer. He's mostly overlapping Sagittarius in there. And people I've seen arguments about this, well, why are the houses all exactly 30 degrees when the constellations are different? And it's you have to devise a system and find a system that works. Yeah. And then there's the whole thing with the numbers too, working with the numbers. And, there's a lot of, maybe not a lot, but there's mathematical systems that are 12 base where we use 10 base. So it's not that weird. Yeah. And there's the whole thing about I don't know what's called, sacred mathematics, so that's part of astrology. It's 12. It's 12 bits, and the moon. Well, depending on which moon cycle you look at, there's 12 or 13 moon months in a solar year.
Wait, Western or Vedic or both?
No. So there's I always mix these up for some reason. It's the lunar month, which is one full moon to one full moon.
Sure.
And then there's the sidereal month, or I think this one's also called the synod. No, that's the lunar month. I mix up the names, but then there's the sidereal month, which is, let's say, moon at 0 degrees Aries, back to 0 degrees Aries. And the sidereal month is the one that's 29 days and blah, blah, blah hours. Actually, it's in my book. I can look it up. And the lunar month, new moon to new moon or full moon to full moon, is the 27 and a half-ish days.
Yeah.
And so there's 13 of one and 12 of the other. Yeah.
And that makes the difference. Right
Yeah. I was going to read that section from my book, but yeah. So yeah, there's 2 months. There's 2 moons also, depending on how you want to look at it.
You just hit on something. How does Vedic astrology approach the blue moon? Like 2 new moons in 1 month or 2 full moons in 1 month? Is that something that
I've never come across that in anything I've read? That doesn't mean there aren't people out there who talk about it. And I know technically a blue moon is a 4th full moon in a season, but we tend to think of it as 2 full moons in a month. But it's really a seasonal thing.
Okay.
I'm going to guess it's not that big of a deal in Vedic, or it just could be I've never come across any articles or anything, or I've never searched for it to like learn about it, but I've never read it in a book or anything that it's a big deal thing.
So it doesn't change
anything. A Western witchy thing.
Ah.
Yeah.
Oh, also too, because of the way the moon travels in Vedic astrology, the days, it's different, correct? Wasn't Vedic, isn't Vedic, you just said 29 and a half days?
Yeah, wait, let me just.
I know we're thinking.
Let me
like
get the exact number for you. Where is it? It's in the front. It's when I go through the zodiac. Sidereal zodiac, lunar zodiac. Let me give you the exact numbers. Okay. So the lunar month, the lunar is synodic. I always forget where synodic is, but I call it the lunar month. Is, the new moon to full moon. That one is the 29 days, 12 hours, and 44 minutes.
Did you say new moon to full moon?
New moon to new moon or full moon to full moon, whichever way someone wants to look at it. And then the sidereal month is 27 days, 7 hours, and 43 minutes. If you want the exact.
Same thing, new moon to full moon. The sidereal.
No, the sidereal is 0 degrees Aries to 0 degrees Aries.
Okay.
And so it's a little shorter, so it would be, because the new moon is not in the same sign every month, right? So
yeah, it changes.
And the lunar month is just our perception from Earth, right? Just looking at full moon. Oh, it's a full moon again. Or a new moon, new month. And that's usually how we look at it, because we can't always see exactly what constellation it's in and what degree it is, the naked eye. So those are the exact numbers there. Yeah.
I got it.
I'm going to get, I don't know. Now I'm going to have to look that up. Is a blue moon considered, on Google search, is it considered a big deal in Vedic astrology? I've just never come across any articles, or I've not read it. I've never read it in a book I've read.
If you haven't come across it, then it's probably something that, it's not considered.
Because I don't make that big of a deal of it. I'm just it's just the cycles. So, but that's why it's more important, in witchy communities.
Okay. Because they do follow lunar energy.
Yeah. It's not like it's anything different. It's just how the lunar cycles play out against our Julian calendar and the solar system.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
How about eclipses?
Yeah.
If someone is born, either the sun was eclipsed at the time or the moon was eclipsed at the time, how does that affect?
So if someone's born on an eclipse?
Yeah, either sun or lunar, solar or lunar. Is that
if someone, okay. It's kind of harsh. Like traditionally Vedic astrology, like if your moon is eclipsed, so if the moon was in an eclipse when you were born, or your sun, it's a bad thing generally. And so technically every new moon is a type of eclipse because we don't see the moon.
Correct.
And technically being born at a new moon is nowhere near as good as being born at a full moon. But in my experience, I can't say like people born around the new moon have had a doomed life at all. And people with a full moon have had like a bright and wonderful and blessed life. It's just, there's a whole chart dynamics. But if you're born on an actual eclipse, so eclipse season is twice a year. Okay, so in Vedic astrology, if the nodes, which are called Rahu and Ketu, so Rahu's north node and Ketu south node, if the nodes are conjoined any planet, it's considered bad for that planet, sun, moon, Jupiter, Saturn, any planet, because it eclipses the planet. And if you're born, if you're born with a moon that is eclipsed, that a lunar eclipse, or your sun is eclipsed at the solar eclipse, that's especially considered bad. Mm-hmm. But I want to point out, it doesn't mean you're doomed. It could be like in the one report, your sun is exalted or your moon is exalted. There could be things that alleviate it, compensate it. You know,
there was the planets. If the sun and moon when you were born were eclipsed, but the placement of the planets are in good standing, or can they actually
balance it out? So there's sort of a system of checks and balances too. Okay. But those are especially harsh. And I will have to say, like, when I've seen a very challenged moon, not like someone born out of a new moon, but an eclipsed moon, or not even on an eclipse, but the moon is in the same house as Rahu or Ketu, there have been emotional, psychological challenges in that person's life. Okay. I've seen that, or it could play out with mother, because moon represents mother. So that could be a distancing from mother, or mother wasn't in your life. Like I had a client and like she had that in her second house. And I was like, were you separated from your mother as a young child? And her mom had actually died when she was 2. So, you know, it could just be an emotional distancing. It could be a physical distancing. It doesn't necessarily mean death, but in her case it did. Yeah. So I will say that that's been pretty, and those planets will be challenged somehow. And so that's part of our karma, right? So those challenges to help us learn and grow. But that doesn't mean like your whole life and chart is doomed. There's going to be something that, you know, positive that, you know, balances that out, or maybe alleviates it in some way. Those are heavy ones, though. Those are definitely heavy ones.
Yeah, it makes no sense to have a chart that's going to be either all promising and whatnot, or it's going to be all negative.
I've never like that, like, because there's positive and negative. It's yin and yang. There may be a chart out. That would be fascinating. Like, find some historical person who had someone who had like what seemed like that we know from history, the best life, and you could get their chart. You need a birth time. I don't know how you do. You'd have to do a moon chart without a birth time, or a Western sun chart. That's like my default without birth time. Mm-hmm. If I can't rectify it somehow, there's those charts. They work too. And then find someone from history who had like the most horrible doomed life, and you knew their birth date, and pull up those charts and just like for study, like see like what was going on. Is it like all bad or is it all good? That'd be a curious little like study. Maybe I'll do that sometime. I've never done that.
I mean, right now the person I'm thinking of, just because of our generation and learning in school, was Hitler.
Oh yeah.
There's been many charts done on him.
Mm-hmm.
He was an art student, if I remember.
Yeah, he was a creative.
Yeah. He's not German, he's Austrian. And then there's some rumors that either on his mom's side or somewhere on his family side that there's a Jewish blood that's in his back. So all the stuff started coming up, and I know there's charts.
That would be an interesting chart to look at. Well, one, I'll say there's probably a lot of auspicious things. or what would like textbook be like, he would probably have a lot of Raja yogas, which there are like a lot. Like, so like the way the planets interact are called yogas, and there's some like really specific ones. But really it's just like, oh, these planets are in drishti and these are next, or this is combust, or these are being pinched and this and that. So I use different terminology because that's helped me to learn it. But I would say, because Hitler probably had a lot of really auspicious things in his chart, he would have had like dozens of Raja yogas somehow, because Raja is king. So he was a king, basically, in Vedic terms. He was a leader of a country. This doesn't mean he was a good person at all, but he was, in his mind, from his view, until the end, he was successful in what he wanted to do. So, but there might be something, and I don't predict death when I look at people's charts, but I have studied personal curiosity. There will probably be quite a few things in his chart that indicate, he lived till 100. I don't know how old he was when he died. Like 40s?
He was young. I think he was like maybe in his 40s or 50s.
Something. I'm not sure, but he was fairly youngish. He didn't live like a full lifespan, right? So I would guess there would be things there, and there would most certainly be indicators, likely on his moon, indicating mental illness. Right. So
I'm also thinking about cult leaders, Koresh and Jim Jones. I grew up with a family. They weren't staunchly religious, but especially my grandparents. I grew up with religion and going to church. And sidetrack. When I heard,
it gives context. It makes it interesting.
Yeah, it's just, I remember hearing, I think it was 11, 12 years old, and one of the assignments that we had to do in school was to do a report on a news article, so like a major news event, and we had to give our interpretation about it. So again, I think it was 11 or 12. Yeah, that was 78. So I was 11 when that happened. And it scared me because of the exposure that I had being in a religious family, and how someone of this power, and I've seen documentaries about Jim Jones. He was charismatic. He had the stereotypical signs of being that leader that people would gravitate to. He knew how to talk. Back in the day, he was considered to be handsome.
I only have pictures of him wearing the dark
sunglasses. Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And you start seeing these patterns of cult leaders, Manson, and there's a charisma, and from an outsider, you're like, I could never follow someone those tracks. But again, they were leeching onto people who didn't have any belief, any faith in anything, and these people gave them the trust into them, to follow them. So it's fascinating for that.
Yeah, pull up their charts. Probably could find Jim Jones's chart. I mean, it's always iffy if there's a birth time, but there's defaults you can do. And, being able to just like woo people in with your speech. I mean, that's a Venus thing. Venus rules the beautiful voice. Probably also some communication with Mercury, but that's like a Venus thing. So I'm going to say like, he might have had Venus on the ascendant if he was considered really handsome too, or in the first house, or be a Taurus or Libra ascendant. Probably more Taurus, I would guess. But and then there's signs for addiction, and that would be moon affliction as well, usually. But there's other ways to see it. Like it's kind of, you look at those like, okay, these are signature things that are known about this person. And this is really how I learned astrology. I didn't learn it. I mean, I read books and stuff and read things online and, all sorts of things. But to really learn it, I would take maybe my own experience. I mean, I would study people I knew because I know things in their life. And I'm like, okay, where is that in their chart? Or I would like read, you know, some horoscope somewhere, and I'd be like, okay, why are they saying that? What going on in the sky would make someone say that for this sign?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I like broke it down backwards.
Wow.
So I really understand, okay, what is it that makes people say that? Plus, my academic background was like classic, so I knew like mythology and all that stuff. So that wasn't, it wasn't like, I'm like, who's Mars and who's Venus? Like that was like my academic background. So that part was fine. I'm like, okay, but what's the energy? Why is someone saying that? Because now Jupiter's moving into this sign. Or so someone's saying that, and I look at this, like the transits or a chart. Okay, oh, that's because Jupiter's here, or Mercury's moving there, or easy one. Oh, okay, they're saying that because Mercury's retrograde. Yeah. Blah blah blah. You know, so it's like I sort of backwards.
Okay.
Did it to help me figure it out, and that's sort of how I like to learn the patterns. Like, okay, I'll memorize the patterns of planets and the decans. Okay, but what does that mean when you put it together? And like how can I put these patterns together to figure out what that's supposed to be representing in a tarot card? You know, it's easier that way than just like, memorizing everything and not being able to understand why and how it all fits together.
Well, yeah, that's why you have to break it down. You know, there's a lot of information. So it's, take your time with the Tarot of the Holy Light. It'll come.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. I think I knew like it had different astrology associations, but like it surprised me how different it is. And I'm like, wow.
Sorry.
I know I like it. Like I like those challenges. Like I like when my brain's like the cogs are like, hey, wait.
Yeah, we think the same. We like a challenge, and it's just a matter of getting to it and then spending that time.
Yeah.
And I start thinking, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Because I've made a promise that I will be discussing this, or I want to take the course to explain this. What have I gotten myself into?
Well, that helps you, like my experience, like when you teach something, you really learn it in a way you haven't before.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay. Oh yeah. Like, it's like, I knew that, but now I really know it.
Yeah. Because you're breaking it down, you're going into it, and also you're building a curriculum, so you're going really into the details. So it ends up being a blessing. It's not necessarily a curse, but it's for people who like to learn a little bit of everything. They can get overwhelmed, and then next thing you know, it's being put off.
Well, it is all overwhelming.
Yeah.
But another reason why I wrote this, because when I was learning astrology, Vedic astrology, I was reading these books that were just like so loaded with information, and it was just like
that. Are they like 500 pages?
No, but they're like small writing and like. And I have one where that broke stuff down better, but it was just like, and just all the Sanskrit terms. It was just like, but what does that mean? And like, I would want to break it down. So that's why I wrote this, so people aren't like, and I say in there somewhere in the introduction, like it can be really overwhelming to study Vedic astrology, especially if you're already in Western astrology in your head.
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of stuff that's similar. So it's like, I wanted something people can pick up and read and like start to read their chart right away, instead of like, oh my gosh, what? This is it. And like, just like it being so overwhelming, they give up.
Yeah.
It's so easy to do that.
And it's good too, because when you showed the book, it's not that thick. So that doesn't intimidate anyone who wants to learn.
It's 120, 130.
Oh, that's perfect.
136 pages.
Yeah.
And there's chart samples in there. I didn't have chart samples in the first edition, which was like, it was like one of the first books I still published. So I was like, read it from front to back as I was rewriting. I was like, oh, I need to change all this. I'm like, what was I thinking? What was I saying? Like, there's one part I'm like, I still have no idea what I was trying to say in this one sentence. I'm like, what? I just took it out. I don't know what I meant.
Are you going to do a follow-up? Are you going to do a second to that?
I might. I mean, it's kind of like to like go the next step, like go into like the dashas are and maybe the Navamsha and divisional charts. Because this is just to read your birth chart. Because again, like that can be layers in itself, and it's so much information. So I could go, I might.
Okay. I'm throwing all these things to you.
I have like so many.
I'm so sorry.
It's like in the list. And a lot of people asked if I would do one from Western, and I thought I would. And I still might, but there's so many Western astrology books out there. Like, it's just another one out there. And
you want to do something different,
Yeah.
No, follow them. I agree. Something tells me stick on that path.
So there may be like, second or like part 2 or I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I like when it comes to books for studying something new.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually preferring, and we'll wrap this up because I know we've been online for 2 hours.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, lives always go so fast. It's just.
Well, it's good.
I can do a recording and it's like 10 minutes, and I was like,
I'm not going to edit this. So people
I'm
not going to edit this. People are going to have to sit through it for 2 hours.
They're going to,
or they could scroll
or come back and
yeah. But when it comes to books, I don't like a lot of information. Okay. The Tarot of the Holy Light, it's a lot, but it's almost like a textbook. So I'm using it more as an educational tool, if you will, as a textbook.
Yeah.
But when it comes to explaining about things of astrology, like general topics, and books that are hundreds and hundreds of pages, I'm the kind of person that I like when someone writes even down to articles and blogs. I feel a good writer is someone who gets to the point and they don't ramble on too much. I like people who really, they know what they're talking about, but they don't go so much into great detail in explaining everything. And that's why with tarot decks, if I get a deck that like the Unified Esoteric Tarot and the Aquarian Hermetic, I'm learning that on my own.
Yeah.
And he has the website. It's filled with information. He has talked about, he did write a book for it, for the Unified Esoteric Tarot. He decided not to do a reprint because he's from Romania. His English, he felt in the first edition, was a bit not clear, and he was, I think he said he was embarrassed by it, so he will rewrite it, but so that he feels comfortable that people, who are reading it will understand.
Right.
We felt
someone to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But for me, with a deck like this, I'm being thrown into it. There's no book. I even asked him. He goes, no, I had a book, but it's not available. I go, do you have a digital download? He goes, no, I don't. So, so it's like with the decks that you had, if you didn't have a book, you already said it's self-explanatory on the Oracle deck. And it is with the Unified Esoteric. It's broken down to the planets. The Aquarian Hermetic has the time of the seasons. All the information's there. All you have to do, like you've been saying, is piece it together and make it work when you're doing readings, or you're learning the tools.
Yeah,
I think that's the best way, and that's, if I was a teacher, I don't want to give everything away. That's the part of being a student.
You want to
learn.
Person to learn and like think and like figure it out. Like
think.
I've never told many people tell me like I can sum up big concepts into few words.
Yeah.
And I've been told that about this book, like, because I want to get the information there. I don't want it to be overwhelming, but I want to say everything that they need to know.
Yeah.
As concisely as I can.
Yeah, just get to the point.
Yeah. It's like, this is what this is. And, and that's where like the chart samples in there, like show, okay, here's how you break it down. I mean, it's not full chart readings because those could be like whole books in themselves.
Yeah.
If I were to write out a chart reading, like a full, like everything, yeah, it'd be like pages and pages. But it's like it gives you the gist of how to read the chart, how to look at the planetary rulership and the interactions, and bring in the, you know, this plan, this symbolism means this, and this means this, and looking at the life of the person and breaking it down. Yeah. So
is the deck available? I know it's on Amazon, but can they order it directly on your website? Can they order the decks?
No, well, the book is on Amazon. So from my website, on my I think it's Decks, Books, and Courses page, you just click on the picture and it takes you right to where you can order it.
Okay.
So the book is through Amazon because everything's self-published. And the decks, if you weren't watching earlier, the Vedic Astrology Study Deck and the Vedic Astrology Oracle, those are through GameCrafter.
Okay.
So yeah, but if you go to my website and just click the decks and books page, and then you see them and you just click on the picture, it takes you right there to order. Okay. Yeah. So everything's all set up there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't have like stockpiles of like 100 boxes of things in my home. Like that was something to consider, like with decks, and that, like I just haven't had the space and the ability to run a full-time shop from the, you know, from my kitchen or something. So
you see pictures on Instagram of people's living rooms filled with like the equivalent of 2,000 decks.
Well, like with a toddler and 3 large dogs, like I can't fill up my house, and like where's the time to do it? Like, you know, it's like I don't have like people who are just sitting around who would love to, you know, package things for me. So, but I would consider it like getting to a point like possibly in another deck, like do like an Indiegogo thing or something.
I was just gonna say Kickstarter or something like
Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and even like decks I've already created if I want to make a second edition with like, you know, a fancy box or something like that. Things to consider. So it's not out of the running. It's just I haven't been in a position, like that's a lot of work when you need a lot of space, and like plus like the boxes of packing materials. Like,
I'm seeing it right now because we're now going to that season, the fall season, holidays. Mm-hmm. People are starting to promote the decks that are coming out soon or will be. Mm-hmm. And they're just like, yeah, I think with Kickstarter, it's like 2,000. I think they can, for decks. I'm not sure how it works, but it seems like people who do Kickstarters, the first release is like no more than 2,000, and maybe it's just a contract that they have with the printer.
Oh, really? There's a limit?
I thought. I don't know if you.
I don't know. I didn't know if there was a limit.
I just see that number. It's just like, yeah, it's 2,000.
Or that could just be because if they're ordering those decks from a printer, they're ordering 2,000, and they're not going to order more. So the deck creator, like when you order from the printer, you have to order like in certain numbers, so like 1,000 or 2,000. So that's probably the creator limiting it.
Unless they go into those higher tiers where they have lots of money, and then they're like, okay.
And then they order another 1,000 or whatever. Exactly. Yeah, that's just so overwhelming sounding, because it's those orders all at once. It's not like you're selling 1,000 over a few years.
Yeah.
Those stocked in your garage. It's like the work of like to ship those out.
Well, look at, like the Holy Light and all these other decks, they're like in their second, third edition, but you know, they kind of let the first edition run itself out and they see how the popularity is, and then they do another run. It's not like back to back to back.
Right.
And you don't know how popular.
Yeah, another option is not to do like a Kickstarter Indiegogo campaign and just do a limited run of like 500.
Yeah, but then you might as well do it self-published. If it's just then the money goes directly to you, and then you benefit that way.
Yeah. Some people do that and they just have their Etsy shop and they sell it through there. I think
exactly.
There's lots of options. I've done lots
of projects for you, Julianne. I'm so
excited. It's great because it's endless. It's like, oh, and then I have this that's, you know, I'm working on, and that, and
Well, you know what to do. You do your priority, what's important. You go work it, finish it, and then you go into the next one. Give some time. between.
And I have to say, like, I've been pretty happy with the quality on Game Crafter. I have a couple decks. My Children's Tarot and the big version of my Scrying Poetry is on my playing cards. And both of them I've been pretty happy with the quality and what they've, yeah. Yeah, it's just, I can't make it like, I can't do like a fancy package because it's not in my hands. But yeah.
Later on.
Yeah.
Later on. So what's up ahead for you? We'll wrap it up now. What's up ahead in the next week or so? Projects. You got your courses.
Projects. Yeah. So I'm working on my Nakshatra course. Mostly it just comes down to finding the quiet time to record all, because it's like small, like short videos and a whole bunch, and organizing it, and then my book on schizophrenia. Those are my main projects right now. And then all the other things I do. Do you have a release date for the book? I would love to be done with it by the end of September.
Oh, that's soon.
But like earlier in August, I decided I needed to completely rewrite, like, I don't know, 15,000 words or something. Needed to rewrite and restructure what I already have. And the challenge is that it's like the structure of the actual book itself is schizophrenic in the sense that it's like all over the place. And so how do I structure something I want to come out as unstructured?
Yes.
I think I've got it in my head, and how I want the break between, like, the chapters are not going to be long. It's going to describe, but like what I'm going to put in between the chapters, because I don't want to be like chapter 1, crazy talk about this, or causes of yeah. So
okay, so that's
so I'm reworking what I've already written. I didn't scrap a whole lot of that, but it's like I need to I'm working on rewriting all that, so then I can add on, but I need to structure my unstructured book. So it's a little challenging that way, but yeah, it's coming along. And if I have enough time to write, if people out there are like, what is she talking? I have an almost 3-year-old, so I'm with her all day, every day, and I do client readings and my YouTube channel. So it's like finding that quiet time is not always easy. If I get enough, I think I could still possibly be done end of September. It's probably going to be October though. It's always longer than I'm hoping, right? But once I get to a certain point in something I'm creating, it seems to then just go fast. And I think I'm like almost to that point with this.
Yeah, I think once you put yourself, you apply yourself to it.
Yeah.
And you start getting that momentum, it's like, okay.
And a lot of the slow part is figuring out, like with decks, like, what do I want it to look like? And how do I want it to, like, how do I want it together? And then once that's all really, those details are figured out, then it's just like putting things into the matrix of it, basically. Yeah.
Don't get lost in the head.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to figure those things out before you can even like really get to the meat of it all. Because like, well, I can't design the cards. So I know like how I want them all to look and what I'm going to put on it. And I think this, but will that work for those cards? And it's like, and getting the whole package together. But that's also the fun part for me. Like,
well, you do the book and then the design afterwards, right?
Yeah. So
easy.
Yeah.
Do you have any last words, Julianne?
No, it was great chatting. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. I'm going to cut it, but then I think we can still stay online. Just to wrap things up. So everyone who is watching, thank you for watching.
Thank you.
This is Julianne Victoria. Her website is, go ahead and state it, Julianne.
JulianneVictoria.com. YouTube channel, Julianne Victoria. Yeah. Just
and Instagram.
search my name and you'll find everything, or just go to my website and like all the social media is linked down there. Yeah. Everything's all connected.
There you go. I will be doing the next Mystic Moon Monday in 2 weeks. And I think it's going to be the new moon, Western astrology wise. Are you looking at your
calendar? The new moon is on the 17th of September, which is Thursday.
It's Thursday, so I'll do it on that Monday. And I will discuss, I don't know what sign the moon is on that Monday, but it's going in the direction of the new moon. Is it Virgo?
It's the sun still in Virgo. Yeah.
So moon's going to be in Virgo.
New moon will be in Virgo because the sun is Virgo. Yes.
That's something I like to talk about when the moon is in the same sign as the sun's sign. So
then it's a new moon.
What's that?
Then it's a new moon.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have in a sense, I don't know if I would say it's opposing energies, but I like to compare and contrast the energies of when the sun's in Virgo for that month, but also the new moon, or if it's a full moon in that same side, the effects of it, how people feel during this time.
Yeah.
So I will be discussing that in 2 weeks. And I think that's it. Again, thank you for watching.
Thank you, everyone. If you made it this far,
yes,
come back a few times to catch it all.
Yeah. And again, it's not going to be edited, so everyone just scroll right through it. And if you do have any questions about the discussion, please contact Julianne. Yeah. She's more than happy to help out and give you guidance. She has some wonderful books and decks relating to Vedic astrology. Go to her website. She is very well informed. I want to have you back again. We can talk about something different. You pick a topic. Well,
okay.
we'll
I'm done with my book.
What's that?
I'm done with my book.
Okay.
Or after September.
There we go. That's fine.
Because that's like, I'm like, okay, I gotta like just make sure I don't add anything else to my schedule, to all the things.
We could talk about Tarot of the Holy Light.
Oh,
because that's something I want to talk about and create a few videos about and do a breakdown.
Let's do that, because Okay.
So that's the deck that I want to focus on now in association with the Unified Esoteric, because it deals with different aspects of astrology.
Yeah, so that'll give me a month to play with this.
Yeah, and it's the month of Virgo or Aquarius, depending on how you're feeling or seeing things. I'm feeling more Virgo because it gives me the energy to just apply and be really specific with, how I approach things.
Yeah.
And there's the Aquarius side where, I have all these ideas and I want to share them with everyone. So it's creating that balance.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the longest ending for this video.
Okay, we're going. Bye.
Okay. Have a great week, everyone. See you in 2 weeks on Monday, Mystic Moon Mondays. Everyone be safe and hang tight, okay, Julianne?
Yes.
Alrighty. Bye, everyone.